If the clear light is not influenced by causes and circumstances, and it's not independently existing, then by what is it influenced?
Do you remember the story?
Do my java chat and round to Manayan and Karewan Kareshawan changes.
Kareshawan.
There's a third there.
Rangshin neighbor.
Koransing round the Madras and Coaching third there. You can let her money and then take Karel tender.
Then you never tell us. Mitawara. Chitaya de Kasa. You must have a Zalia, was sent Dumaches in Mingtaviare. Mingtavado. Was sent Dumaches do my shadow tella? Yeah, do you do Hasavan Shingi? And then did do you start to do much about sometimes, do much sometimes? You much have a channel, you did Tagach and do much of sometimes. New, when Sanjay Chilelia, Tagains, Gunley Kevin, Tagains. Or Chile Turkish 11 she said.
When we speak of clear light as being an unaffected or unconditioned phenomenon, we have to understand that unaffected or unconditioned can be understood in two ways. One is in terms of not arising at all from causes and circumstances, but the other way is that something does not arise anew or newly from causes and circumstances. So, in other words, this way of being unaffected is referring to phenomena which have a constant stream or an everlasting stream of continuity. So, for instance, clear light would be like that, and also the enlightening influence of the Buddhas would be like that. This is something which is unaffected in the sense that it doesn't arise anew or as something new from causes and circumstances, but nevertheless it continues constantly pervading all. When we speak in terms of continuity, continuity can be in terms of having various parts. So there's continuity in the sense of things having parts from the point of view of a physical object. So like, for instance, even atoms have directional parts. And likewise, there's continuity in terms of time. Let's say, for instance, in terms of consciousness. So even with atoms, we can subdivide atoms into subatomic particles. These can be subdivided further into quarks and so on. But when we get down to the smallest particle, even that is not something which does not have parts, because even that will have directional parts. And in terms of consciousness, that also has continuity in terms of its parts, in the sense that it has former and latter moments. So likewise, clear light is something which is labeled in terms of its parts. Yes. How can the clear light mind, like the one which is experienced at the time of death, be used to bring us enlightenment?
냐르식 세두 유에서리 밀름기 내고 외세리 디들이야 장바 여버지나 아니 마이웨세디 람지웨세기 몰 끼니 윤두 외세 뭐부 세살 차윤두 외생원도 주야기 좌려 두야 다 좌서 외생원도 주야기 털을 침버리.
There is a way of using the clear light of death as an instrument for being able to achieve enlightenment, because there is that way, and in order to be able to make use of that clear light of death, which comes normally at the time of death, it is necessary to have trained beforehand and practiced in terms of the clear light which can be experienced at the time of being awake, and the clear light that can be experienced at the time of dreams, in the dream state. By being used to that and familiarity with that, then through certain very special techniques, one can likewise make use of the clear light at the time of death in order to use it for achieving enlightenment. Sometimes when we get angry, if we hold it inside, we get almost sick. What should we do in order to avoid such frustration?
당은 배배리 먹으려 약시로 통근 나서 표현이 상스러래. 통근 나서 표현이 상스러네. 저 통가 나라를 지 견을 저 있는 푸지는 거 자로 걸어. 되는 시간이 저 생고 나라 나서 이들이 단시간 자로 시작해.
There's a saying in Tibetan. There's an obstruction inside the trumpet. If there's an obstruction inside a conch shell or a trumpet, if you blow it out, then you get rid of it. And so like that, in situations like this, sometimes it's very good and helpful to let off steam, to let it out.
다 안다때 가서 우리 콩도를 년부터 해서도 콩도 사배 커도 달라. 우주 지역에서 말와. 그 남주직다 뒤균내네 지 콩주님이 양양상다. 아니 지 참바다 쇠배 편영 양양상다베이나 아니 갈래리아 콩주균 지점만 통해 최기 아니 콩주수 충주도 콩주 년부터 다 도스제마도 콩주수 전부 사배 커도 돼 남상 콩주 까토야서 내리 가오래.
When anger has actually arisen and we're in a state of rage, then at that time it's very difficult to gain control over it and to apply an opponent. However, the method which is followed is to try to train ourselves beforehand. So beforehand, before we get angry, to over and again think about the disadvantages, the drawbacks of being angry, and to think and train ourselves in terms of thoughts of love and tolerance and compassion for others. By building these up as a habit, then it will make a large impression on our mind, so that in difficult situations our anger will get less and less strong in terms of having made a stronger and stronger impression beforehand in terms of thinking of its disadvantages and so on.
쌤기 요어스야 직በት በነን ተዲ በነሽ አሶረ ነጉኑ የደበችባ 멤버 የደበች ሽማ ፓርታ가 나상 착스전 다 멤버 세드라서 저바 딘데치 야야 말에 쌤기 녀바 세야생디 갈레야 고 조조돼야지.
To be able to change the mind is not something which happens instantly by a simple method, such as, for instance, eliminating the darkness in the room by putting on the lights. It's not something that works like that so simply and instantly, but is something which requires a great deal of effort over a long period of time, working gradually. Are all kinds of desires and attachments disturbing attitudes? If they aren't, what is the difference between positive and negative desires?
Jumzen damba jigi dabati 다 코드버스 샤비는 배제봐. 코드버스 샤비는 배제 jumzen dandenge. 원하는 jumzen 여대버 jigi dabati 디베. 그런 dabati. 때 냐라 다시면 줄에 예바래. 그다 녀모 방사래. 변하다 가사 줄에 dabati 용이야래. 다 내가 찍디 차고 되는 거다 봐. 이 패지다 당연히 됐습니다.
There are different types of desires. Those desires which are based on reasonable causes and necessities, these are desires which are not ones which are to be given up. Those are reasonable type of desires. So even when one has abandoned all disturbing attitudes, still one will have various desires which are based on reasonable causes and needs.
다 지단반의 셰빈 리치 직신도와 그런 것도 총강수랑 친배이네, 그렇죠? 그런 총강수랑 친배이네. 뒤에 주는 야고, 뒤에 녀고 사버지 찍리기도 와. 다 되네 죽대야 짜도 소스 빠샤 장가시대서 나 더상 녀투도 살아서 삼로스 과체. 딱 모두 거르베스는 과면도 신경쓰도 와. 삼나한테 대응도 와. 그래서 딱 되게 근데바디 딱 럭셔리 데버로 차는 거 알아? 어떤 데바디 해진다 자한테 봤을 적으리. 딱 뭐는 necessity 관계다. 지 가소래. 그런게 등이지. 단 데바디 지단 샤베이는 김전대변 데버서 봐. 이나야가 묘모 쟁기로 인데 민들라 묘모 문진로 차라게 개발의 관계 또 차이 거야. 타녀도 랑전 되면 되고 샤네. 딱 간다 그라. 덴지 뭐그런 신주 주변 진배 덴지 디무는 되배 루기 아니야 차방 처음들이 샤야도 봐. 그래서 저희는 묘모는 되게 알아. 디무 가서 런신주 예반들 진바 디무도 men둥에게 그냥 좀더 마왔지 텔라 땜배야 가서래 로 가서 그러지 내가 나빠진다 민두가 겹지 셔봐 나빠 대장이야 묘모 잘 시가 시가 매버리 또 묘모 잘 알아줘요 디셔서 셔서 사인장 라주는 찬지 버려 그냥 first part 찬지
There is those types of desires, however, which are based on attachment. So, for instance, when you go into a store and you look at all the items in the store, then you take this one and you take that one and you pick up many, many different items. But then, for instance, when you go to pay for them, if you see that you don't have enough money in order to pay for all of them, then you realize that there are some items here that you really didn't need, that weren't so necessary. So this is a clear example of how there are certain desires which are just based on being greedy, which are desires for luxury items which you don't really need. So that's a distinction which can be made in terms of desires for things which are unnecessary or luxury items, as opposed to desires which are based on actual things that one needs, based on reasonable necessities.
Second part, please.
This is a rough level of distinction between correct desire or wish and attachment, desire and attachment. However, there is a much more subtle level which can be established through is established through the establishment of the different views. For example, within the school which accepts that phenomena are not existing intrinsically, are not truly existing, then there is a kind of very sudden attachment which is brought forth by this conception of true existence. And this very subtle attachment, which is not recognized by other schools as attachment, this attachment can be identified as attachment only from the point of view of the understanding of non-true existence, and is not an attachment in terms of wishing some object of like rough level of attachment.
자상가 덴진 뉴모수 데바다 만데베 캐브라기 아니 덴시 차라샤이 덴시를 차라
Independence of the acceptance or non-acceptance of the conception of the conception of true existence, there is a rough and subtle presentation of the Four Noble Truths.
That is it.
If someone has the karma of being sick or has the causes for premature death, is it possible for us to take these things on ourselves and to give them longer life? If so, what is the method for doing this?
The lug nerves, lug nerves, lug chiwa chumbi na. Any.
The page hajong on that bed.
Natsadan,
Jimayam be chiwata, tendeki chi layer, na. That's Koramanyon, but just so rangi thing. Nusu layer.
Len tuyache.
Length, Tashi Yorubas.
That is Chitanja, Taya. But nezu mixage, exception really, ya tonglingi, that Taisha. Yinaya, Chajusam, the tonglingi Mikochiachi.
However, there is the practice by bodhisattvas of taking on the sufferings of others and giving others one's happiness.
Training.
They have the training for this.
That the training did not exceptional case in the and
within the sphere of this training, in certain exceptional cases, it will actually work and you will be able to take on others' suffering.
Yeah, that dia Hajoga the Kazore. Hajogi Simjenteda, you Simjenteda, Yan Tolin Shing, yeah, that Pension Sambas name to Hadaini, the Tolin Shing, Simjan Korani, Yan Tumu yeah, Kasore, Lag and Jatumu, you have a G thing, you are about Tas, and you
it's on the basis, it will work only on the basis of there being a very special connection or karmic link from the past between the person who has the suffering and the other person, such as a bodhisattva, who is taking on that suffering from him or her. So it doesn't happen just all of a sudden for no base without any previous connection or link, but has to be based on some special connection from the past.
Yes. That Tagianda had a chillum never gave up. Any Kashur Shirp combat, the shirp combasola, the shirp give, then you would be Jigdivish. That the name, some damn combats at the coin.
We already discussed this morning having fervent regard or admiration for the teachings and likewise having wisdom or discriminating awareness. So now we will discuss mental constancy or single-minded concentration.
That's some digital never say, some digital that never thinking this added, no channel, that's not too much.
Now, as for this a state of single-minded concentration or samadhi, this is something which has a common nature, or it's something which is shared in common between both Buddhists and non-Buddhists.
The other Jumden, Luguna, Chashana, Jumden, the Sam Magyakuna, any Hakjut. The terms Hakjut, any things in love, Jumden the Krang for things in called love, Quambe Lujusia.
In a previous life account, before the Buddha became enlightened, there was the account of his having studied single-minded concentration with a non-Buddhist teacher, Lakchu.
Oh, that Tadana, any things in the any Raji Semi, Nuba, the Shukshambuji, Peshisha, and other things in the Memerushadi.
And as for this achieving such a state of single-minded concentration, in which the mind then has a tremendous amount of power or ability, it will not do unless we develop it. It's something that we have to have.
是吧？다 띵인지 고미하기 아니 자원 가난저 다대변나 심만 된간저 나다로 다게 탈이 다게 걸리 이나야 직심 변나 다 당연 심려야 조심 사지 심중 사지 니체.
Now, in terms of our mind, we have primary minds, and then we also have secondary mental factors.
Das 在生的常里呀，那么些不但那么些嫉妒对吧的，那么些冲突对吧的，那么些你看过，那么些野人的，那么些孤人的，这里忙不中的。
Now, as in terms of these primary minds, there are those who assert that there is one primary mind, there are those that assert 6, some that assert 8, and some that assert 9 different types of primary mind or consciousness. But the most widespread assertion is of 6. The 5 of the senses and the 1 of the mind. As far as mental factors, then according to the Abhidharma Samuccaya by Asanga, there are 51. However, I have seen a Burmese text.
I haven't seen.
I haven't seen. I heard. I didn't actually see. I heard about a Burmese text in which 200 are listed. However, there are you can't really count all the mental factors that there are. So in fact, these lists are merely summaries or summations of the major mental factors, and so it's within that context that we understand the listing of 51. And single-minded concentration or samadhi is one of those mental factors. Wisdom or discriminating awareness is likewise a mental factor. Discriminating awareness or wisdom is the type of mental factor which takes an object and discriminates about it, or it analyzes, discriminating away what is incorrect about it in terms of its way of its nature and so forth, and in that way discriminates what is the correct thing about it. This is discriminating awareness. Whereas single-minded concentration is not making such types of discrimination or analysis, but rather is just the factor of staying single-pointedly on the object, remaining with it. So we have in general these factors of being able to discriminate things and being able to concentrate on things. And the different types of meditation are used to enhance or make these powers stronger. So by meditating on gaining a serenely stilled and settled state of mind, of shamatha, this helps increase the power of our basic concentration. And by doing the meditations and training to gain penetrative insight or an exceptionally perceptive state of mind of vipassana, this helps to increase the power of our basic discrimination factor.
So that shineleya shirugi miba shaya, yanchi nanga miba shaya. That negi migding keke yama, that migding kashani nebiya.
For gaining a serenely stilled and settled state of mind of shamatha, there are many objects which can be used as a basis, either external objects or internal objects, but it really doesn't make any difference.
Internal objects shaya shashana jig lugi naya jig tigli komyando yang jig zai ne komya sono yamena jig yo komya so yamena dindegi jig migo shana kaya mera che namshi nabra sheba sazam jigsam korang ge tengla shaya dindega gamada kharche she.
Among the various inner objects that we can use to focus upon to gain this single-minded concentration, you can focus, for instance, on various energy drops within the body, or also on the subtle energy system, the channels, and so forth. There's also meditating on internal light, clear light, and so on. There's also meditation in which one doesn't meditate on any physical object with form, but rather meditates or focuses simply on the consciousness itself, on the factor of awareness and clarity, mere awareness and clarity, which are the defining characteristics of the mind. There are the close placements of mindfulness on the body, the feelings, the mind, and so on.
The meeting this is this savage so shape that the number or that shape chest.
Now, whatever type of object we choose in order to gain single-minded concentration by focusing on it, we choose an object that is suitable to us, and first we have to take that object to mind, and we have to know this object correctly and clearly. Yes. For some beginners whose minds are not yet supple and flexible, for such type of beginners, there are occasionally found special instructions for using objects through the basis of the senses. So, for instance, focusing with your eyes on an object and by staring at it, trying to work to get a little bit of more stable concentration. There are some instructions for that. However, that's only for beginners in some special cases, but in general, the main thing that we use for gaining single-minded concentration is the mental consciousness, not the consciousness of the senses. So whatever object we're concentrating on we concentrate on with the mind, and we take it to mind by thinking about either a semblance of it, a mental picture, or by thinking about using an idea of it and focusing on the idea. As for when to do this meditation, it is better to do this in the morning, the early morning. When we do this meditation to gain single-minded concentration, the way in which we hold our body is something which makes a difference. Most of you know how to sit in the proper meditation posture, so there's no need to really explain this. So, for instance, when you do the Japanese zazen meditation, you sit very properly. Most of you are quite familiar with these postures. When we start to focus on a mental object, it's necessary not only to just know that mental object, but also to be able to have it clear and vivid so that it's completely clear and obvious to you, as if you could actually see it. Now, for instance, if you are a Christian, then you might focus, for instance, on a cross. Now, you're not actually looking at a cross with your eyes, but rather you are imagining a cross in your imagination, using your mind. And you want to be able to see this clearly in your mind's eye, and to have it without forgetting it, without losing the object, but to have great memory or mindfulness of it. So what we use in order to maintain that object in our mind's eye is mindfulness. Or memory. This is what we use for holding it. As for the distance at which we should visualize this, we would visualize it about 4 or 5 feet away from us and at the level of our eyebrows.
다디 미딩 미지버디 템베송야체 봐 다디 돌이야 미딩 미지버 여바 정도 마세 다 미딩디 세버 여데버 직당 아니 디간이야 그쇼래 셰베 생아로 숙청부 여데버 고기버 인도산에 다디 바도 중에디 진회 제무야래 근데 인도산에 진회이 뭐로 시신된
Chingu.
진규지
Yes. Chingwa. Chingu.
Chingwa. 당연 조치의 칭화.
Yes. We are using then the power of mindfulness in order to hold the object, in order to maintain our attention on the object without losing it. Now, when we are maintaining this with mindfulness, what we want is to be able to have that object be extremely clear and vivid. And so what we use is
유지고 사실 말다. 유진 생활.
what we are working to get is a very vivid mind. That the mind itself is very alert and clear, so that it sees this object clearly. What we are using then is the force of alertness, and this is to combat dull-mindedness, our minds being dull.
칭화.
Dullness.
잘 묶을리면 칭화. 잘nes I think 묶어.
So it's the mind being very cloudy or murky or sinking down.
A feeling of sort of sleepy feeling.
Yes.
That use right. That 묶어.
Mupa is getting very foggy-minded or heavy.
right. 다 묶어 매버시 묶배 칭회 두체. 칭화라는데 다 셈도 지 nhập대에 소리시. full alert 또 nhập 대지. 잠깐 가서도 승근했으되 승근했어. 들으셨어도.
That's not an English word.
다 묶어도 칭화 신송 개발.
So the first one, there's two obstacles that we want to get rid of. One is where the mind becomes very cloudy and heavy, sort of very murky, foggy-mindedness, I call this. And with that as a cause or a circumstance, then we get mental dullness that's sometimes translated as sinking, in which the mind has a certain type of clarity, but it's a little bit dull, it's a little bit off.
다 되게 셈
Sinking mindedness isn't a word.
가. 됐어. 저래. 딱 가다 잘해야. 아니. 다셈. 그래서 다셈 가서래. 미딩간 맞아버리는 셈배 털어줘라. 셈시단 털어줘야지. 양줘야지. 너 다데 냐라. 대주다 셈 털어줘야 용야기 깬자로디 셈팡 터잖아. 엘러드 쳇잖아. 그냥 셈 털어줘요. 쳐야겠냐.
So when we have, I had it the wrong way around, when we have dullness, then dullness is something which can then go into the mind being completely cloudy and completely foggy, so that it is completely unclear about it entirely. Also, there's the other possibility in which the object is lost completely. In other words, if the mind is holding on to the object too tightly, too strongly, if we're too uptight, you say in colloquial English, then the object can be lost just completely. So if the mind is too excited, in that condition in which it would lose it entirely, then we use methods to calm the mind down. When we calm the mind down, then what we want to do is to collect it back inside. So when you bring down or tone down the excitedness of the mind, and calm it down a little bit, that will bring it and make it more collected inside.
다양 선망 황마르친 선망도 뒤치니 선팡 마르치베 그도라 shum버들이 거라 shum버디 칭워사야 잠잠라 shum버리 그도와 칭워사야 칭워도 shum버사야니부터 잡으래 그래서 로자에 배차 가셔나로 shum버스 들이여 버려 와 자다 간다 선 가봐 그베 냥가 여베 이두잖아요 가봐 상야 tun다리 선팡 마르다 선주 뒤니두잖아요 선팡 마르치니 야마도 shum유두잖아요 그베 냥가 충을 치고 있나야 칭외 냥가 레고요 칭외 냥가 레고잖아요 야 선팡 토르다
When the mind is too excited, then what we try to do is to bring it down, to calm it down. Now, when we calm it down, if we calm it down too much, if we go too much in that extreme, then again we can go into the danger of having mental dullness. Now, mental dullness, when the mind is extremely dull, it can also sometimes be called discouragement. In other words, often you find in some of the texts that the ancient translators translated the same word with these two expressions, the mind being very dull or low, and the mind being discouraged, perhaps low and discouraged, convey the closeness that is intended here. If the mind is too low or too discouraged, then what you want to do is uplift it again. So if the mind has become flighty and is too excited, we tone it down. And if the mind becomes toned down too much and we become too low, then we want to lift it back up.
더동안의 칭워도 거발이야다 라과지 다 야 텔레 차와지 신도 차와지 그게 차라는 것도 증근이거든.
Now, in terms of this mental dullness and flightiness of mind or mental agitation, these two things have several levels. There's rough, subtle, and extremely subtle mental dullness and flightiness of mind.
다들 소수 냠용이야. 다 근데시 여대바디 셰베체. 아니 소수 냠용부터 하네. 아니 꿈신 아니 못쳐베체. 아니 냠부 대답되면 냠부 띵.
Now we need to know what these various difficulties are in terms of these levels of dullness and flightiness of mind. But to actually be able to identify them, then this is something that we identify or recognize on the basis of our own experience in meditation. So then, when we can actually identify it ourselves from our own experience in meditation, then we can start to apply the various opponents to get rid of them. So it's extremely important to have an experienced teacher who has experience in all these matters so that you can ask questions to him or her. What is important is to devote a great deal of time to this. So within the 20...
I think another word like this. Now, in order to practice this, especially the continuity practice is something most important. So you see, in daily practice, you see, most of time you should spend on, you see, this one practice. And you see, short session, and many
sessions.
Many
short sessions.
Several sessions. Each session should be right from the beginning. Try our best, be a good quality. Even short doesn't matter. Should be a very good one and short. Like this, then we have to practice this under, environment, something complete stillness, right? Complete silence. So in modern cities, almost impossible, unless you put some basic, right? Unless
Unless we are put inside a soundproof box.
Right. Oh. And if you see someone under proper condition, then through this practice, you may achieve the qualified samadhi within, say, few years. Generally, in the text, there is possibility to achieve within 6 months, but that's almost impossible. I can say under this circumstance, it's very difficult. So at least a few years will take. I think 6 months, maybe 6 years. That will be good, right? That those in the community are any big. That's sim. You can naya go temple sad chinche. Any chinguinaka chung rote do these casore. Rimba medawa dirty, semne gusha. Semne soso kalea, many casore pigay. Semne so yan dubiati, zochi, tebewan dubia, then a sambet of dubia, then a combat of debate of young to this journey, doctors. Right? Anybody but dimly chabano, ya, Junse, Patern, Chechor, Dig Cavameda, you're in Duzane, is those.
So when we work like this to settle the mind and have it stay on an object, then we are able to have the mind stay for longer and longer periods on the object with more and more clarity, and also with further and further elimination of the faults of mental dullness and flightiness of mind. Through this type of process, we go through what is known as the 9 stages for settling the mind, and we use for this the various 6 mental powers, such as listening to the instructions, pondering them, mindfulness, alertness, and so on. And with this as the forces or powers behind our meditation, we use the 4 different types of attention and so on in order to progress through the 9 stages for settling our mind. This is the way to achieve a serenely stilled and settled state of shamatha.
That thing is in Namsha Tadu, Shivaji Shea, Bezu Chavina, any come sum che, right? Come sum cheni, come kongi, Kadaini, Sungum, someday she, only someday I like you Shabas. Then a sumi she, Minam Yukone Shabas, that is dog, some suit Shabu.
And in order to...
Someday I like you share. Sumi Minam Yukone shares.
In order to get into this more extensively, then one would need to learn about and understand the presentation of the higher realms or higher dimensions, the dimension of ethereal forms and the formless dimension. And in the dimension of ethereal forms, there are the 4 levels of mental constancy and the branches of them, which are explained through their branches or causal their branches or parts. And then in terms of the formless dimension, there are likewise 4 levels of absorption within that, which is to be discussed in terms of their objects and aspects. These are clear in the Abhidharma texts on general knowledge. This is quite extensively known in Thailand.
다디 신내서 되시죠.
So that takes care of the serenely stilled and settled state of mind.
다디네. 다디네 스티스. 자와 고미야스. 닝즈 고미야스. 자와 고미야. 봐. 시버지.
The fourth item here is the discussion of how to develop intense loving concern or compassion.
다디샤 인도산에 다 대신가 안 되네.
When we discuss this, this brings us into the sphere of the Mahayana, the vast-minded vehicle.
안도 디버도 다 대보시준자로 두모네.
All the items discussed before have been items shared in common between the modest-minded Hinayana and the vast-minded Mahayana.
다 대신기 장주 있음 보면 달라야 아니 갸가파베 여기 다 시스루做下去没找你穷一个就这门啊没管的落下去아니 딱심지 건도落下去你说一下
As for the methods to develop intense loving concern, there are two types of methods which evolved in India, which were practiced in India. The first is in terms of the 7-part cause and effect meditation, and the other is the tradition of equalizing and exchanging our attitudes concerning ourselves and others.
근데 명아 되는데 자가자마 셔. 근데 명아 되는 그래서는 당용 공부는 당니 근데 마시 진짜 진수 연구 잡은 인지 차선 심지부 셔.
As for the 7-part cause and effect meditation, this is something, if we list what the 7 are, first of all, it's on the basis of developing equanimity, and then we count 7, which is recognizing everyone as having been our mothers, then thinking of the kindness of our mothers, wishing to repay that kindness, then developing love, then next developing compassion, then developing the exceptional resolve or pure wish, and then finally expanding our heart with bodhicitta.
당신이 없이 시행되는 지다 야 다소에 sabjama domro 때문에 수용도 당신이 양바스 다지지 고통만에 사바 현실의 고통만에 사바 다시 제가 사바 단단한 동력 금주신 다 내서 순도.
When we think in terms of the practice of equalizing and exchanging our attitudes concerning self and others, this involves first developing an equal attitude towards self and others, then thinking about the disadvantages of cherishing ourselves, thinking about the advantages of cherishing others, then thinking about how it's possible to change our attitude towards self and others, and then the actual way to exchange our attitudes concerning self and others in terms of love and compassion. In terms of love and compassion, which is used in the meditations of taking on the sufferings from others with compassion and giving with love to others our happiness, so taking and giving. In Tibet, the way of practice was to combine or mix together these two. When these are put together, it is in 11 stages. 14. So if you try to think about these and get some feeling for these while I explain them, it will be good.
지금 가서 안 가서도 삼로 도스타용도 삼로 큰 많이 받디 년기 차라 차 다이 차라 다음에 로지에 이제는 큰 많이 차 되게.
First is the discussion of equanimity. Now, normally our minds are very uneven. We do not have equanimity. They are uneven because our minds are inclined towards those that we like, the ones that we feel attachment for, and our minds have aversion from, or we wish to get away from, those whom we do not like. Whereas for complete strangers who are in between here, we have no feeling at all. So what we need to do is from our own side even out our attitudes and feelings towards everyone. When we think about an enemy, then this enemy might be somebody who may have harmed us at some time now, but if we think in terms of other times in the past or the future, this is someone who could also have helped us or might help us in the future. So in this way we get a more even attitude in terms of this person not necessarily only being someone who hurts us. The same thing can be true in terms of those friends or relatives whom we like so much. It is in this way that we can equalize out our mind. Now, as for strangers, even if we leave aside the discussion of past lives,
stranger,
indifferent. As far as enemies and friends are concerned, even if we leave aside the discussion of past lives within this
past life and
next lives, then even within this life, they can change their position. One can become the other.
So you see, actually in reality, not at all uncertain. So you see, thinking this line, then try to make one's own attitude towards these things equalize. Right? This is the first stage. Then the second stage, next stage, and didi, kandashi sosu, diang zo da peji jiao ngama sam, jiao ngama sam dan de tanen zhao yong yore, sosu ji, kashuri. Any mala sobe, kanda ji sosu lebe pen dangen mengku chen yong yore sambe, and did sam dan.
Now the next stage starts to involve us with thoughts about previous lifetimes. So we think in terms of someone such as our mother or anyone who has given us a tremendous amount of help and benefit.
This is explained in the Abhisamalankara, the 4th chapter, when when the 10 equalities are explained, and the development of the mind is explained in terms of considering others as having been one's father, mother,
brothers,
brothers, like that, sisters, and so on.
자, 디네 인도자
Oh,
나도
this is in terms is discussed in terms of the 10 equalities which are object of the path of preparation.
죄송아. 말을 시켜봐서 참가자. 죄송아.
So recognizing others as one's mother is only an example here. Can be any of these others.
간다 소소 지 디리스트 교도 잘 봐. 어다 대다 된다고 깨요래 303당이요.
So we just think of whoever might be the dearest one to us, the one who has been most kind to us, and use this as an example.
야번에 가시야번에 소소 계획 내줄 야번에 아마 춘주간에 시사를 서로지 아마 믹서양 잡아서면서 아마도 잡아 영매도 준데 영수지를 봐. 한테 인지미지 아마디가 우수지 밖에 없어.
For instance, there may be someone whose mother died in childbirth or when they were very young, they were very young, and so they don't have a special connection or relationship with their mother, and it's not necessary to insist that they have to think in terms of the kindness of their mother.
Some cases not so pleasant relation, right? So you say not necessarily to insist, right? Like that. That's the. That is not true. 당연히 뭐 맛있어. 죄송아. 다 되게 가서 말아서 배다. 년도 줄에 내가라. 엔 진심을 땅열에 산데 진짜지.
So that's the second point in terms of recognizing others as having at some time been our mothers, or someone who has been the most dear to us. And then the third point is to think in terms of all the kindness that has been shown to us that we've received when they have been our mother. So we had equanimity, and then recognizing others as our mother, and then remembering their kindness. Next is a special way of remembering their special kindness. So others have been kind to us not only when they have been our friends or relatives, but everyone has been kind to us, even when they've been strangers, that we've derived a great deal of benefit from total strangers.
Either direct or indirectly.
Either directly or indirectly, and also even from our enemies we have derived a great deal of benefit, because it is from our enemies that we learn tolerance. We develop patience and tolerance only with obnoxious people or enemies.
당국이 컨스트럭션 제가 그도기 미디리 나도다 저한테 야마라. 야마디니 디디기 가서다 레가 제베 제부 상부 텔라 때는 딱 아주 배주시 봐라. 디디 진레고 봐. 도 센지 개인도 시부지다 섬제 나도 저는 뭐 마시마. 싸워내 규메도 스트레인저시 봐. 스트레인저 디디 딱 유배 관에 나도 마시실 때 봐. 자 나도 그나 투데이 그나 서바이브 치아디 디에딜 제 타네 정도가.
We can think of the example of this church. We are all gathered together in this very lovely, conducive circumstance of being inside this church building. There aren't enough windows, so there isn't enough air in here, but aside from that, it's a very conducive place. And we should think about all those people many hundreds of years ago who actually built this building. Now, we do not have any special connection or relationship with those people of the past who constructed this building. Nevertheless, it is on the basis of the kindness and the work of those total strangers from the past that we are able to enjoy the present conducive circumstance and facility of this building. So with this as an example, we can extend this out and see that in fact we are enjoying the benefits of the hard work of a very large number of total strangers.
와, 다 도시에는 가서 그는 소수다 소야기 세, 그, 내매 긍지도하네 다 심자는 대단히 어디도.
So no matter what we make use of, whether it be food or clothing or medicine or any objects, all of these things come about through the efforts or the kindness of the work of others.
다 냐다스야디 미직니 직니 직도 유배권은 냐다용. Fame
is something which is likewise deriving from one person talking to another.
One single 냐다 용태입니다. 소시고 있는.
You cannot become famous just by yourself.
아니, 근데 이러잖아요. 딱 간다고 해서 미지직이 변에 단다. 그다음 지단변에 미지직이 단다. 근저 시합에 있나요? 샘전 때문에 나마도 가지고 가게지도 거.
So no matter what way you look upon the matter, there is no way that we can exist by ourselves in a vacuum.
So that means you see, entire success is something depend entirely on others. So you see whether other side there is whether special motivation is there or not. You see, as far as we are concerned, it's related. It's something which is very important for us. So this is the way to remind or to remember their kasota,
Their kindness.
Kindness, yes. 당연공마 말시 진정 개발와 this one.
Yes.
딱 최후도 하는 사람 남아 있나? 변화서. 가. 그렇지. 다 최근에 잘 찾아나. 변화 닝지공이야, 참박공이야, altruism 공이야. 근데 탐절로 미국 심장을 믿는 연구하지마도 요하면 봐.
So when we think of the other practices here in terms of the practices of love.
I think you see, in the terms of practice, now you see, for example, practice of love, practice of kindness, practice of compassion, practice of tolerance, practice of forgiveness. Without other, no possibility to practice these things. Now you see altruism. Something there, so you could develop altruistic attitude. Without that, there's no possibility to develop. So that way, you see, to achieve Buddhahood entirely depend on other beings, sentient beings. So that's why you see, how to say, I don't know, one's achievement of Buddhahood, one way, you see, Buddha's, how to say, blessing and Buddha's teaching, very, how to say, one of the important factor. Equally, the all sentient being is, you see, the equal partnership, isn't it? So half, half, how to say, that gain.
Circumstance.
Right. Rangni namjin yu goban toyagi yujin cheba sanjene yonde. Yujin cheba semjene yonde bishto.
So the circumstance which allows us to become enlightened, to become a Buddha ourselves, half of that circumstance is provided by the Buddhas themselves, and half of the circumstance is provided by sentient beings.
근데 이 rangni sanje yu goban toyagi 겐그 타라 산제의 semjeni 냠배권에 좀 봐.
So, in terms of one's own attainment of enlightenment, this is something which is established on the basis of having both Buddhas and sentient beings on these two conditions together, equally.
So
this was in the sphere of the fourth point here, which is the point of the special way of remembering others' special kindness.
다디 진 잔용이잖아요. 다 진수 상무지 요구도가 되게 마시기 진정의 토안에 진수 상무지의 요구리 대단 재선제에 용기 참바 제신 판매 남보다 제신 판매 남바시도 통야를 로지 끼끼기요. 대래 다 대래 숙체시 이 진수 상바다 이 용기 참배 다 제신 판매 다 용기 다 참바 들지 아니 진정 캐바와 참바 뒤지스래.
Now, on the basis of remembering the kindness of others, this leads us naturally to the wish to repay that kindness. Now, we were thinking of the kindness of others when they were our mothers, and on the basis of that, one would develop a feeling of heart-warming love, and the love with which we cherish others and would be unhappy if anything bad happened to them. But it's especially in terms of developing this awareness of the kindness of others, which is a special way of remembering their kindness that we were just discussing. On the basis of that, we can develop a much stronger type of heart-warming love and love with which we cherish others and would feel unhappy if anything bad happened to them. So it's within this context that we develop this feeling of wanting to repay that kindness. Now, at this point, we then work to develop an equal attitude towards self and others.
랑 뭐네 심지어는 파다 차단 미시 스첸 차단 미시베 셈녀마디 매버체 단 니그도 그 땅용사야지 셈전 상말로 랑은 신chen 대완대와 동해면도 냐마리 스도
The equanimity which is developed here in terms of equalizing our attitudes towards self and others is not the same type of equanimity which was the first step in this process. That first type of equanimity is the type of equanimity with which we get rid of or eliminate our attachments and repulsions. This is the equanimity that we develop now at this later point in the process, is the equanimity with which we feel that just as we ourselves want to be happy and not to have any suffering or problems, that everybody is equally in the same situation and we are all equal, both self and others, in that we all want to be happy and nobody wants to have problems or to suffer.
다디 다시 냠바스 다디네 나 저다님부터 되신 말이야. 나랑 동네 참모장이 면대와. 대화 치선 중요해. 처음 미시바 면신지 샘전 탐자야. 동네 참모장이 면대. 야, 대화 치선 중요해. 원 미시바. 랑도 꼭 끈에 충분히 신 루센 샘여버 줘.
This is the essential point of equalizing our attitudes about self and others, that we ourselves do not want to have any suffering. We ourselves want to have as much happiness as possible. We never feel that we have enough happiness, and even the tiniest amount of suffering or problems we want to get rid of. We don't want to have that. And just as we feel this way, so does everyone.
All sentient beings.
All sentient beings.
다전에 드네니 다전에 다 진정이 경 고통만에 사바사야 되나.
This leads us to the next point which follows, which is thinking of the faults of self-cherishing, of having a selfish attitude.
다 란치브는 짐베 아니 샹기 쏘아체. 란치브는 짐베 마시네체. 란치브는 짐베 와기 로임체. Those ten, when a migi chugudi, 하나 매를 원했다. 배나 류마가 예주 뜸부터 란집을 좀 란집에 왕기 다 레디 상가 세부샤도.
When we think about the faults of self-cherishing, we think in terms of how it is attitude that we commit adultery and sexual misconduct. We can go through all the various non-virtuous or destructive actions, particularly the destructive actions of body and speech, and see how all of these destructive actions come about because of our self-cherishing attitude.
단 전문이 최계시면 되죠. 전문이 다가가는 거는 지단도 스텝이 있나야. 다 소수 찍어마도 상담 매버시 있는 다 미참으로 돼야 막아쳐 돼야. 다 소수 배라 가서 드셔다 간다. 타마변의 시소나 다 더비 야샤 사고 시샤스는 더비 야샤스는 제수이란 자로 차용도와 고야
We can see this not only in terms of dharma or religions, but just in general in the world. If there is somebody who is extremely selfish, who always is exploiting and harming others, and is always self-cherishing, that this is someone who nobody likes, and who when they die, people feel relieved and rejoice that they've finally gotten rid of this person.
다 될래도디 현재는 좀 뭐지 중나 다 반나 소수봉 머진리 봉 로인 봉 생디드 참말로 즉 다 파르 벌이야 네버디 레다 네버디 도윤도 전에 이 겨울에도 그래서 아니 차서 차샤나 즉 상주급 되게 있어야 상주급 참바든지 사이 참말로 현재는 좀 터네 디레이 봐 현의 컨선 전에 이 레겐데 레도
The opposite side of this is to think about the next point, the benefits of cherishing others. All the constructive actions or virtuous actions come about because of cherishing others. It is because we cherish and have such sincere concern for others that we restrain ourselves from taking the lives of anyone else. It is because of cherishing others and our concern for others that we refrain from stealing things from them. It is because of cherishing others that we refrain from causing harm or pain through sexual misconduct. Then likewise all the good qualities of love, compassion, having an expanding heart of bodhicitta, all of these are things which come about because of concern and cherishing of others.
아니 배는 아주 지당다 미지나 샤샤나야. 원래 집에는 배는 소셜 워커스도 봐. 그봐? 그 소셜 서비스 라가시네 돼. 원래 단에 소소변은 르다. 지미 샴디주 밀리아 로트즈잖아. 딱 원래 상관없을 때 원래 단에 인디 가서 미상고리신. 딱 좀 아주시로 봐. 디그 그저기 밀리아 판다고 저기 원래는 연대시도 상관없어.
If we think in terms of examples from our ordinary life, if there is somebody who devotes their energy and themselves completely to the service of others in terms of social work or any type of involvement with helping society, that this is something which is very beneficial, this is something which everybody likes, when there is somebody who devotes themselves to the service of society and others.
근데 인도잖아요. 철께서 샤바. 철께서 샤모체. 지당 탄의 샤바이나야. 랑 진진기 랑 제번 좀바디 견해 되지. 정신을 통통해야지. 현 제번 좀바디 연대인 되지. 수인의 통통해야지 또.
It's not necessary to have to think about this in terms of religion or dharma, but just in general we can see that Self-cherishing is something which or selfishness is something which has a great many faults and drawbacks. This is naturally obvious. It's the nature of it. Whereas cherishing others and always having concern for others is something which has a great many benefits and advantages.
Ransana, Randa Shanigalo, Dawan Deva, Dunga Minduba, Kokunitsun, Dawa Drum Nuba, Dunga say Nuba Dea, Nigalo, Sun, Yava Chigla, Randa Shangi, Tandani with the Kashun Ziyundu, Shansana, majority Chadiare, one Ranslama, single Chadiare, that the Kashun Zibina, and shit to have to.
So we should compare now who is more important. We all are equal. Everybody wants to be happy. Nobody wants to have any suffering or be unhappy. Everyone has exactly the same feelings.
If and that's the same right.
And the same right to have this happiness and the same right to be rid of suffering and problems. So if we look at ourselves, we are just one person, and when we look at others, then others...
Now only difference is one self single, other is majority. Right? Now you say forget majority, emphasis on single minority, that is foolish, isn't it? Right? Catch a majority, catch one. So one single catch a
So what is most important is society, is others. So if we consider them to be the least important, and we consider ourselves to be the most important, that is silly. So in this way, we come to feel that I myself am not really so important, and others are far more important. And so it is with this state of mind that we focus upon the sufferings or problems of others and take intense concern about that, and with a feeling of compassion try to take on these problems from them or remove them from them. And when we focus on others who are deprived of happiness and who have very, very little happiness, then we develop a feeling of love, and with that feeling of love towards them, practice thinking in terms of giving happiness to them. When we think in terms of this love and compassion, we think of this not only in terms of, in theory, giving love to others and taking away their problems, but also not like that, but rather we think in terms of taking on the responsibility ourselves to actually do it. When we take on this responsibility ourselves and accept this, this is known as an exceptional resolve. We have the exceptional resolve to actually do it.
Rangi tungele tawachiada, rangi dewa totu chijumado midua. Tana rangden do, right? Rangden do, rang tungen saya di rangju ki nyumu mabasuni tungen le chawa sha ba. Di na shin shan sem shan shan zo ina ya, tungen le tawa cheba la tungen tetan te ju rangju le yue de ba di sewe kwane in toku yar ba ta. Da toku yar ba tungen le tar ku yar ba.
Now, when we look at the situation in which how will it be possible to for everyone to be free of their sufferings and problems and to gain happiness, it is as within ourselves.
Now here I think, here you see, in the terms of temporary practice, you see, now those, you see, poor, how to say, people in problem, you see, wherever means to help. Now for example, you see, someone sickness, showing a good doctor, introduce a good doctor, or some, in cases, you see, financial help, like that. And especially, you see, in the terms of giving wisdom, in the sense, you see, about education, giving education, or helping education institution, like that way, and helping, you see, medical field, and social work. These are the, you see, form kind of helping other people in the terms of temporary benefit. Now, in the terms of long-run benefit, that's
in terms of long-term benefit, then just as in order to become happy and get rid of our problems, we ourselves have to get rid of all the disturbing attitudes and impulses on our own mind streams. Likewise, the same thing is going to have to be true in terms of others. They are going to have these disturbing attitudes and impulses removed from their mind streams. So we can help others, work for the benefit of others in terms of teaching them what is to be accepted and rejected in terms of wisdom for this whole process. In order to do that, it's necessary for us to be able to know all the dispositions, thoughts, idiosyncrasies, and personalities of all others. If we do not know the types of dispositions and the thoughts and feelings and all these different aspects about the other persons, then even though from our side we may have the motivation to be able to benefit and help them, and even though we might teach them the correct, valid teachings, nevertheless it might not actually suit the other person and so might not benefit them directly then. In fact, it might even be harmful for some. However, if we have the omniscience with which we know everything that can be known, then for sure we will have the ability to be able to benefit and help everyone properly. Then we have to think about the possibility of actually achieving such an omniscient state of mind with which we know everything that can be known. As we were discussing before, the mental obscurations, which are our various disturbing attitudes, these are things which are removable. These are things which can be depleted or removed from our mind stream, And likewise, the propensities or instincts of these disturbing attitudes are also removable. So it is based on thinking in this way that we can logically convince ourselves that we can remove all these obscurations and become omniscient.
딘데인도 전에 딱 거봐. 체도 차와 샘장은 미네. 아니 라미 조장고 거봐. 전도녀에 샘달라 창조 샘슬라.
And so when we have this special aim or concern in terms of other sentient beings or limited beings who have such a great need, and we have the great interest and intent to achieve total clear-mindedness and full evolvement, in other words, enlightenment of Buddhahood, in order to be able to actually benefit them, this is what is known as an expanding heart of bodhicitta. That's the way to meditate on developing such an expanding heart.
다 들어야는 가서 샤바 차상으로 줘야 된다래야. 다 네가 너베 도스 좀 샤바이나. 다 람 차상으로 줘야 된다래야. 너베 도스 좀나.
So if in order to complete the presentation of the entire path and the teachings, if I were to add a little bit more on top of what we've discussed already,
다 샘께네 잡아놓으려야 돼. 샤바. 샘께 봐서 이게 매쳐버려. 람라 러부요. 탑라 러부요.
it is necessary not only to expand our hearts, but also to actually, with bodhicitta, but also to actually develop some type of conduct or enlightening behavior with which we actually help others.
다 될래야. 아니 짐바 주름 서바 준주 3대 시럽스 차이 훨씬 둘래.
So with this we develop the far-reaching attitudes or perfections of generosity and ethical self-discipline, tolerance or patience, positive enthusiasm, mental constancy or concentration, and discriminating awareness or wisdom. These are the 6 far-reaching attitudes or perfections.
안데 추림세안디 다 랑도 이지 담배 추림 조될 상태. 랑도 이지 담배.
And for the discussion of ethical self-discipline, the main one within the context of these teachings is the ethical self-discipline to work for the benefit of others.
No, not right. Something like you see, restrain from thinking selfish. Right? Yeah, that is it. That teaching, Shinru Nane, Jimbada, Sujimda, Waya, any kind of Saba. That's a Dachana, the Zuchedi, Sonagu Sache, Sonagu Sauce Shemadi. Any sheriff chair, so sheriff chair, in a deep cork W, some dancing, deity, and is possible.
In general, when we think of these far-reaching attitudes, the attitudes of generosity, ethical self-discipline, and tolerance go to build up a collection. Part of the far-reaching attitude of tolerance goes towards the building up of a collection of merit or a store of positive potential, whereas another aspect of tolerance, in terms of tolerance for the teachings, the practice, and primarily the far-reaching attitude of wisdom or discriminating awareness, together with the far-reaching attitude of mental constancy as its helper, go towards building up the collection of insight, or the store of insight. And as I was saying yesterday, in order to bring about what is meaningfully beneficial, bring about the meaningful benefit for self and others, it's necessary to achieve both the mind and the body of a Buddha. So we need to practice both method and wisdom together in a unified path.
아니 탑기 심비 싫어기 심비 탑사야 컨디션스나 냐를 장주고 셈기 나탑 장주고 셈기 탑 장주고 셈디 심베 관에 아니 돈이도 싫어 고민도 자네 디 탑기 심비 싫어스라 그래 다야 돈이도 싫어 가서로 싫어보다 냠냠 열었잖니 아니 추어 탐제 두모다고 다 미주다고 다 차려 관에 The Dumatev Simjan Mine, Dumatev Namgikoba, Tokudo, Sambe, Enya, Chanju Sim Gay Duzane, the Shiravis in the Tapsla.
As for the way in which these two, method and wisdom, are combined, it can be within the context of one held by the force of the other. And so it's method within the context of wisdom, or held by the force of wisdom, and wisdom held by the force of method, or within the context of method. Here, method is referring primarily to the method of expanding our hearts out with bodhicitta. First, we expand our hearts out, and then, within the context of having a fully expanding heart, then we do the various meditations on wisdom to gain the understanding of voidness or reality. So it's within the context of our heart being expanded out to all others that we develop the discriminating awareness of wisdom or reality. Now, the other way around, it is within the context of seeing all others as existing like an illusion. In other words, it's within the context of wisdom that then we can develop an expanding heart of bodhicitta. In other words, the wish to achieve enlightenment in order to be able to benefit all these limited beings who all exist in the manner of being like an illusion. So in this way, wisdom is developed within the context of method, of bodhicitta, and bodhicitta is developed within the context of wisdom.
다가는 신기 진바동한다, 주림송한다. 근데 사바고마다 탐자로 거리야 싫어 무슨 버전이. 규모대비 통역관의 진바동이야. 규모대비 르심베타는 주림송이야. 규모대비 르심베타는 사바고마야 디시고.
The same is true in terms of the practice of all the other far-reaching attitudes or perfections. One practices generosity, one maintains ethical self-discipline, one maintains tolerance and patience within the context of realizing that all limited beings exist merely like an illusion. So in this sense, we practice all these other methods within the context of our wisdom. It is just this much which is practiced within Sutrayana. If we go more profound and deeper than this, it gets us into the subject of Tantra. All that has been discussed so far is still left, it still remains as the basis. Tantra is not something that we practice without any foundation like this. It's not something that we just come in off the side and immediately leap into its practice without a foundation. So if we ask, what do we add on top of this in terms of Tantra?
다 조상 당서디 탑시 열미시바 사치예요.
The main point is having an inseparability of method and wisdom.
디 탑시 열미시바 사치. 다이 디 용야를 근데 소거를 ስለ바이나. 아니 sabke zo dansa 가사디 미고 허고를 비네스 나바랑 심해가 내봐서다 되리 야나 내봐 동년을 전에 수능 할샤와 다다지고 주세다.
If we ask, how is it in Tantra that we have an inseparability of method and wisdom? It's in terms of having our minds be aimed at a deity, at the form of a deity, and taking that in the sense of taking it to mind, in the sense of taking it to be devoid of existing inherently. Or it can be in terms of having a mind which understands the absence of true existence and having that mind appear in the aspect of the deity. It can be in either way. It comes down to the same thing.
다들 건드렸을라나? 그러다 응얼이야 동니공. 동반이 공데 그러다 동니 예배로 뒤니 주시셴이 아니 영어리야 수군 넘버 7년에 세트바이.
The way that we do this is first to think of a total absence of all fantasized ways of existing, or voidness, and then using that mind which understands this total absence or this voidness as a basis for actualizing what will come next. We actualize out of that the form of a deity. We have this appear in the aspect of very clearly as a form of a deity.
대연도산에 가사 지산다. 상계기 다 수구 현준 수구 당 안한서 놀려야 차츠지다. 현준 수구 시다 현준 수구 남바 딘디지도 용 딘디지 용선은 아주 럽튀야야만 삼도 매버 차대요. 죄도 매버다 우리. 땅 알아서 전부링배 로려야 추주시기 다 수기 남바지 일을 참아도 야마봐. 대인도산에 딱 가시오래. 저부 산지에서 현준 수구 말아서 로려 차츠시기 다 남바지 아니 일이야 샤워체니. 봐. 일 샤워체니 다 고미야지. 디 미고 다쳐와 서구 고미야서지. 된전저 다 서구 검사에 제일 캐실 서구드샤 미광 캐실 서구드샤니 대땡기 춘닝에 있잖아. 아니 미국 다셔와 하이 콜로를 미국 당 넘버 7 정심에 벌어 내가 장대면 이부터 로직을 뒤지고 용이 말이야.先生 차상先生 장이 좋았지라.
I think in terms of the body of the Buddha, the Buddhas would not, Buddhas can appear in many different forms and what is beyond our imagination, but they will appear in a form which we can relate to and understand as well.
무서워요.
We meditate on the form of the body of a deity, on the body of a Buddha. Now, the body of a Buddha is something which can appear in many, many different types of aspects beyond our imagination, beyond what we could describe in words. However, in this world of ours, they would appear in forms to which we can relate. They would not appear in forms other than that. And so we have the mind with which we understand voidness. Such a mind would then take on the aspect or appearance of the form of a Buddha, the body of a Buddha in terms of the body of a deity. Then this is the clear or clarity aspect of that mind. And likewise, it is focusing on the voidness or the reality of that body of a deity that it does not exist inherently from its own side. So in this way, we have together in one mind both the clarity aspect of the body of the deity and the profound as method, and the profound aspect of the understanding of the voidness of that deity. This is the general way of procedure in the three lower classes of Tantra. As for the main methods used in this process, in the the first two classes of Tantra, Kriya or ritual deity practice, and Charya or behavioral deity practice, it presents this type of practice or path in terms of the yogas with sign and without sign. When we get into the practice of the third class, Yoga Tantra or integrated deity practice, then it adds on top of this further sophistications or more sophisticated methods in addition to what we had below. And so you have the practice of the four mudras or seals in Yoga Tantra. When we get to the highest class of Tantra, Anuttara Yoga, or purely integrated deity practice, then the practice of inseparable method and wisdom is not practiced in terms of merely the rough levels of consciousness, but rather is practiced in terms of an inseparability of method and wisdom on the level of the finest or most subtle level of consciousness. When we wish to be able to transform the subtlest level of consciousness into the nature of being an actual path of the mind, a true path, it's necessary first to make clear that subtlest level of consciousness so that it can actually be involved with taking objects. For this, it is necessary to stop or cease the rougher levels of body and consciousness. For this, it involves the practice with the subtle energy system, with its subtle energy winds, channels, and energy drops. In terms of this, there is the discussion of relying on a sealing partner or mudra. By relying on a sealing partner, then one is able to make use and work with the subtle energy system of the energy winds, drops, and channels to be able to actually convert them or change them into the nature of a path. So it is a forceful method.
다 탑시 디디 규네 봐. 탑시 디디 규네 다 되게 안 하는 거죠. 규 라마스는 녀도 사고 싶디 그러 봐. 규 라마는 셔다가 녀도 사고 가다 슝녀도 사고 디네 셔셔베 캄 디시 닝부스야. 다 디간게 즈머디 림시 장니. 아니 캄 디시 닝부 땡기 런신 남다가 슈니죠 봐. 런신 남다가 슈니디 모니 그렇지. 런신 남다가 자주 모니고 알 봐. 달라치. 캄 디시 닝부 다 차르규베 디시 닝부 차르규베 사삼 직삼 그等이기 다 직바 지 셔바죠 봐. 디 이 이시 추구지.
So by relying on all these sophisticated methods and skillful means such as this, then we get down to the point of what has been discussed in this complicated text, the Uttaratantra, the Lama, the furthest everlasting stream. In other words, we are able to get down to working on the source which allows us to become enlightened, and so we are able to remove all the stains from the clear light mind, and by removing all the stains, then the natural purity of that mind becomes what is known as the svabhava kaya, or the nature body, the corpus of nature or reality that encompasses everything. And the mere clarity and awareness factor of the mind itself is something that through these techniques is transformed into a wisdom dharma body, or a corpus of deep awareness that encompasses everything.
디 땡기 에너지도 왔다 나는 배게 위해서는 디 땡기 스페셜 에너지티 개회 숨다 꿀뚝.
And in the context of the presentation in Tantra, then we have the making out of the subtle special energies of the body that we just discussed. Out of these we
what is you mean? Special energy of that mind.
The special energy of that mind, of that clear light mind, out of this, we are able to actualize the two form bodies of a Buddha, the Sambhogakaya, a corpus of enjoyable use or full use, and a Nirmanakaya, or a corpus of emanations.
다다임다. 다디 규라메셔 찾다. 규라메 다 규라메 가서래. 치 용조도 샤요 말다. 다 규라메 돈다 용조로 다. 안다 하드 저 찬수샤다.
So we have, with this, we conclude the teaching on the furthest everlasting stream, the Gyu Lama. And although we haven't actually discussed all the words of the text, we have covered all the meaning of the text. And so, in fact, we have treated it in even a more outstanding way.
That is the, that's what it is.
We may not have done this in the most profound and deepest way possible, but we have done it in a very modern way, which means we've done it very speedily and quickly.
So now, you see, completed. This time's, how to say, teaching. So, you see, among my friends, if you find something useful, something, can be practiced, then practice it. Eventually, it can give you some result. If you feel something not suitable, then all right. It's no matter. How to say, it's all right. Right? So that's all. Thank you very much. Now finally, you see, as how to say, the namjuta church has had a dedication children. And I don't know church and she have a carrot on dig, now the summer of Julia, and she sends some get to Yachi. Tell it then, champagne catchable in Malam, watch.
It is the custom at the end of a teaching to dedicate whatever merit or positive potential that has been built up through this teaching for positive aims, and so we should dedicate the positive potential for all of us to be able to develop a kind and warm heart and to be able to develop altruistic feelings of being able to benefit and help everyone.